The question in the title, or to put it a different way, is photography a crime, can be answered instantly. It's a very easy question to answer. The answer is that, with the exception of certain situations involving national security and terrorism and laws regarding indecency, photography is not in itself a crime, nor should it be. That means the auditor tagline is more or less true, but is it really as simple as that? There are no absolutes in law, and the simple approach is never a real answer, so here I will give you a fuller answer. First, we have to acknowledge that there's a distinction between auditors and photographers. What auditors do is set out to provoke a reaction to a camera. A photographer may want to do that too, but his reason is artistic, and he normally desists from crossing the line into illegality or infringing privacy or the dignity of his subject, whereas an auditor's reason is to create confrontation, as that gains an audience for his channel. In that light, the PINAC slogan looks a bit silly, because for an auditor to say that photography is not a crime is surely missing the point. It will be a bit like a bank robber saying that he's done nothing wrong because he was carrying a camera at the time. It is true that photography is itself not a crime. Again, nor should it be. But it is also true that photography is not an excuse for committing crime or for disregarding other people's rights. How did this schism between photography and social media auditing come about? How did auditing come about? Well, let's first take a look back at the history of photographic auditing. I reject the popular theory that it began in the United States. I think it began in Britain, specifically in London, amongst photographers who were unhappy with the oppressive attitudes of police and security to photographers in the wake of the terrible terrorist attacks in London on the 7th of July 2005. In the late 2000s and into the early 2010s, videos started being uploaded to YouTube by photographers in which they would show how they were being treated in London. I'll show you an example which was uploaded in 2009 by Guardian Media.
My name is Simona. I'm an art student. I come from Italy, and on the 19th of November I went to Paddington to film, to take some pictures. I've always done lots of artworks about buildings and modern architecture, and at the moment I'm working on a project about CCTV and surveillance. I just took a general view of the square. I filmed some modern buildings when the police community support officer arrived.
Do you want to know why you're filming?
Why not?
Is there any reason at all?
No, just for fun.
Just for fun?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Why not?
These buildings.
Well?
These buildings. Do you like looking at them buildings? Do you?
Yeah, they are beautiful.
Are they?
Yes.
And that's why you're. Right, so you're basically filming for fun.
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
The footage continues with questions being directed at this lady, and eventually what happens is that she's arrested. Nearly everyone who watches this video sides with the lady. I don't. I side with the PCSO. Let me explain why. I'm not saying that the way the PCSO speaks to her is totally appropriate and that he does everything right. He doesn't, but overall my view is that she's in the wrong. She starts the video by telling us that she's an art student who has an interest in CCTV in relation to buildings and architecture. That's fine, and she's perfectly at liberty to photograph security assets even on a private building. I have no issue with it in principle. It's a free country in a manner of speaking, but she wasn't very forthcoming with the PCSO about this. My impression of her is that she wasn't being very astute and didn't show much awareness of her environment. She hasn't brought anything with her that could reassure someone who is concerned that she is genuine in her interest and that she's not doing something that could aid terrorists or others with malicious intent. That doesn't mean that there's a burden on her to prove that her intentions are genuine, but she could have brought with her some evidence of her hobby or interest that would reassure the officers that she was probably there for genuine purposes, and she could have also explained how the material would be published and where and how it would be circulated in a way that could minimise the potential for it to give aid to terrorists. She refuses any information beyond very vague generalities. I accept that she's not strictly obliged to disclose further information, but if she wants to take that liberty, then she may have to accept the consequences, which are that she may face questioning from a sceptical officer and she may be searched or arrested. It's easy to point the finger at the police and make fun of them in these situations, but the very people who do that will often be the first to blame the police if someone carrying out hostile reconnaissance is able to do so unchallenged and that leads to some tragedy. There is a belief, even within the police, that hostile reconnaissance is purely a covert activity. For instance, the MPCC guidance on auditors states this: auditors' bloggers should not be confused with hostile reconnaissance, which by its nature is covert. That's not true, and I'm surprised to read that in an official police document. Hostile reconnaissance is often covert, but equally it could well be carried out overtly by somebody posing as an auditor or vlogger or photographer or similar. This is why I have criticised the activities and methods of Auditing Britain so harshly, because his auditing technique deliberately imitates that of a terrorist carrying out hostile reconnaissance. That's why I argued in a previous video that he should be prosecuted for obstructing the police contrary to Section 89(2) of the Police Act 1996. Anybody who doubts this should take a look at Volume 1 of the report of the Manchester Arena inquiry, which I will link to in the description. You don't have to read the full report, just look at the sections on hostile reconnaissance. The terrorists carried out multiple hostile reconnaissance on the arena prior to the bombing, and according to the report, it is possible one of the reasons the terrorists were missed is because security focused on someone else they thought was carrying out hostile reconnaissance but turned out to be innocent. This is why I don't find Auditing Britain or his videos very amusing, and I think he should stop it. Going back to this lady, if I were an art student with an interest in, let's say, how CCTV impacts on the built environment, and I wanted to record a photography project in that regard, I would come prepared for questions and objections because I would know that what I'm doing could be interpreted by others as suspicious. Whether it's right or fair for the authorities to interpret it that way is beside the point. You have to deal with the situation you face rather than adopt this ivory tower view that says other people have to see it the same way you do and believe in some sort of abstract idealised concept of freedom that you have in your own head. In reality, that freedom can't exist anyway because other people have rights too, including the right not to be blown up by a terrorist, which means that sensible precautions have to be taken in certain circumstances. We have liberties which exist subject to law, which means we accept some inconveniences and restrictions so that we can live in an organised, peaceful and civilised environment. If I'm walking along a street minding my own business and some policeman comes up to me and starts demanding my bona fides, unless he has a reasonable suspicion that I'm up to no good, I can walk on and ignore him. In other words, I can adopt an aloof stance towards him and take my liberty. On the other hand, if I'm stood with a camera photographing the inside of police cars or CCTV cameras, some people may have concerns about my behaviour, especially if I look foreign or have a foreign accent. I accept that sort of profiling is not pleasant, and in an ideal world it would not exist, but it's preferable to being blown to bits. That doesn't mean the photographer in those circumstances is doing anything wrong, and nobody's assuming that, but it does mean that there's an onus put on the photographer to explain himself. If I choose to be aloof and opaque and not explain myself, that's my liberty to do so, but the police may then treat me with greater suspicion and scepticism, whereas if I explain myself with reasonable transparency, the police may be reassured and leave me alone. That doesn't mean I have to give the police all my private information as if I'm an open book, but I may have a means of reassuring them. What I especially don't like about these ivory tower people is how they traduce police officers who are just doing their jobs. I'm not saying I like the police. I have a book full of complaints about the police, but I would never complain about a police officer just doing his job, which is what this officer, a PCSO as it happens, is simply doing. Let's return to the footage.
Now project, and that's it.
Here we are. You see, you're a student, which you didn't tell me at the start. You're now doing an art project, which you didn't tell me at the start. Okay, so if you told me that at the start, we probably wouldn't be in this situation we're in now, would we?
Shortly after Simona switched off her camera, the community support officers left. She said they returned moments later and were joined by 4 police officers.
The first officer just pushed me to the ground to handcuff me, and I soon had all of them on the top of me. And I could hear the builders booing from the distance. Then when they handcuffed me, they were bringing me to the van. They were still telling people that they arrested me just for filming, and the policeman just twisted my arm on my back to give me more pain. At the end, after 5 hours in a cell, they told me that I had to accept a fixed penalty notice if I wanted to leave, and so they gave me this £80 fine because I caused harassment, alarm and distress in a public place.
I have to say that does seem a bit harsh. I don't know if it was right to fine her under Section 5. We don't know all the facts though, we're only getting her side of it. She does come across as genuine and honest, but we don't know for sure what she was up to. The overall point I'm making here is that complaints of this sort tend to be slanted and exaggerated towards an anti-police narrative in which the police are presented as oppressive and unduly abrasive, when no account is taken of the obligations the police are under to assess and investigate potential threats. It's very unfair, and it's perhaps no coincidence that the film I've just shown you was produced by The Guardian, a liberal media conglomerate in Britain aimed at rather naive middle-class people. The fact it was a white figure of authority giving a foreign lady a hard time plays into a certain narrative that educated middle-class people sometimes buy into, that the police are racist or bigoted and oppressive, when often the truth is much less dramatic. Even when the police make mistakes, it tends to be, the complaint about them tends to be exaggerated for the purposes of an anti-police narrative. I think this is how auditing probably began. Most hobbyist photographers are middle-class type people, and they may be the type of people who are articulate and can hold their own in an argument with authority, and they will be the type of people who might buy into a narrative of the police as oppressive. That having been said, these middle-class preoccupations often will have a sound basis. One of the earliest photographic auditors was Ken Livingstone. As far as I'm aware, he's not a photographer himself. I call him a photographic auditor sardonically. But about 10 years or so ago, he was being interviewed in London for a Dutch documentary, and they were stood on a private outdoor shopping precinct and were challenged by security and then officers of the Metropolitan Police. Here's what happened.
Their security folks tell us we're not allowed to film. If we continue, they will call the police, and that's what they do.
Can I have a word with you, sir?
Hi, hello. Hi, cheers.
Oh, so there's nothing
Hi.
doing. What it is, it's just that
Are you employed by Westfield?
we're part of the Westfield Police team, yeah.
Well, hang on. I mean, are you working for a corporation or the Mayor of London?
The Mayor of London, yeah.
Your job should be policing the streets, dealing with crime, not jumping when some private corporation turns up and says we don't want people filming here. There's no crime that's being committed.
As I explained to the lady there, is
Yeah.
the fact that Westfield...
But you don't work for Westfield. You don't work for Westfield. If they're unhappy with what we're doing, they can go to court and take court action. And it's a private sector thing, not one involving the
Just
police.
explain to you why they called us.
I don't care why they called you. You don't work for them. Why don't you go and deal with some real crime rather than waste your time and ours on something like this?
In touch with the Westfield sort of thing. Just to explain to
But
what's
no, we're
going
not.
on.
We're
Just
doing
give
this
a
now.
simple solution
I'm
to
not
the problem.
contacting Westfield. When we gave permission for this to be built, this is a public thoroughfare that allows people to get from the old Stratford site through to the Olympic Park. We were not told that there'd be bars on people, going through or filming or anything else like that. Everybody here, about half of them, want a picture of me with a selfie. Is Westfield going to object to that as well? Anyhow, you're wasting our time now. Either arrest us or let us get on with it.
I'll just...
Right.
I don't know what it is to explain
Yeah.
to you.
Wait, no, I'm sorry, you don't work for Westfield. You work for the Mayor of London. Your job's dealing with crime. This is a civil matter. If Westfield don't want us filming it, let them go to court, let them take civil action.
No, they'll be escorting you off.
No, you can't do that, actually. This is no crime. Tell me, has a crime been committed? Has a crime been committed? No.
No, it hasn't.
But in that case, go and do some serious work catching real criminals or protecting people from violence. Don't work for a corporation.
Yeah.
You don't, They're not paying you. We're getting on filming now. If you want to arrest us, arrest us.
To carry on filming.
Who's going to stop us?
Well, they'll be escorting you off.
Well, no, let's see them try it.
Okay.
Then you can intervene to prevent violence. I'm moving on. You can come with me, or this will be interesting for the film. Carry on filming. Hi, cheers.
What's happening? Are you running from there again?
I'll be too old next time. Cheers. Hi.
I side with Ken Livingstone in regard to that incident. I think the actions of both security and the police were ridiculous, and this remains a problem today. We do need legislation or some development in case law or some sort of ministerial guidance to resolve it, because most of these places can be considered public highways. Around the time of that Ken Livingstone incident, videos were popping up on YouTube like the one I'm now showing you, in which photographers would test the reaction of security to public photography around central London, and some videos would show and critique the reactions of police and private security. These were the first auditing videos essentially, but of course they didn't call themselves auditors, they were still photographers. One of the factors that fueled this early social media trend was Section 44 of the Terrorism Act 2000. This allowed the police to search anyone within a designated authorisation area for the purpose of the prevention of terrorism, and there was no requirement that the officer should have reasonable suspicion. Not surprisingly, the European Court of Human Rights eventually ruled in 2010 that Section 44 was in breach of the right to a private and family life under Article 8 of Schedule 1 to the Human Rights Act 1998, and while the power did continue to be used for quite some time, in the wake of the European judgment it was eventually repealed by Parliament, which meant that the police would have to rely from that point onwards on Section 43, which was the same power but with a requirement of reasonable suspicion. I found an interesting exchange from the old Section 44 days between the photographer and the police officer at the Gherkin building in London, which must have taken place in around 2009 or 2010. Security had reported the photographer to the police simply because he was photographing the reception areas of the building. Here's part of the exchange with the police officer, well, there are several officers actually, in which they insist that he should show them his recording.
Right. It's only under extremes. You'd have to really suspect me to be a terrorist to have a look at the images.
Why are you taking the photos, mate?
Because I'm working.
You are?
Yeah, I'm working.
As what? You're trying to catch the coppers doing this, isn't it?
No, I'm a journalist.
That's exactly what you're doing, isn't it? Yeah.
In other words, the police officer is alleging that the photographer has deliberately provoked security to call the police so that he could film a confrontation, with the aim of making the police look overbearing and silly. I do think the techniques used now by auditors had their beginnings with photographers. I also think it's amongst photographers that the bogus legal concepts now used by auditors first arose. It was probably a photographer who maybe was also a lawyer who first came up with the Section 33 idea. It makes sense to me that it was a lawyer because a lawyer is more likely to misconstrue the law because he's exposed to it all the time. I think it's unlikely that someone without legal training would accidentally happen on Section 33, an obscure provision of an obscure statute. I think it's very likely it was a lawyer who came up with it. In January 2012, at a mundane location in Scunthorpe, the Golden Wonder Factory, a photographer who was on the public highway was accosted by security guards and threatened. Here's the footage.
Why is that?
Not allowed, mate.
Who says?
These say.
Yeah, but I'm not on their property, so it doesn't. Of course, why doesn't it matter?
Taking photographs of their company.
And why is that a crime?
Not allowed.
It says who?
Don't wonder.
Yeah, but do they have a right to say what people can do on public property? No, so I can take photos then.
Well, I'll be questioning it.
Well, go question it then. I'm going to carry on taking photos. I do. Sorry? Why is that?
You're breaking the law.
What law's that?
Taking photos of company buildings. You're not allowed to do that by law.
Who says that?
The law?
Stand up and I've been asked for you not to take photos.
Right. But what law prevents me from taking photos? If you're stating the law, can you tell me?
It's a private company. You're not allowed to take photos of it.
And I've just spoke to someone.
It doesn't matter who you've spoken to. It doesn't matter if it's a private
What gives you the right to take photos?
What gives you the right to come out here and tell me I'm not allowed to take photos?
Security.
Get in.
I'm on a public footpath. I can do whatever I want.
No, you're not.
Yes, this is a public footpath.
Yes, but you're taking photographs.
Does this property belong to Golden Wonder?
No, but that property...
No, so I can do whatever I want on this property.
Where?
Does it matter who I am?
Yes, it bloody does.
No, it doesn't matter who I am. No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Why does it matter who I am?
Yes.
You're going to do what, sir?
You're not allowed to take photographs.
What,
and I've been asked to ask you not to.
Who says I can't take photographs?
Do you need to know?
Does policy on your company site dictate what people... That's my personal business,
No,
why I
it's not
want
your
to take
personal business.
photos.
It's not when you're taking photographs of Golden Wonder.
Well, of course it's my personal business. I can take photos.
Why are you taking photos?
I can take photos of anything I'd like to.
Why are you taking photos? Why do you want a picture of a factory?
Well, why not?
What for?
Well, for my own personal use.
Why?
As I've just said, my own personal use.
Why?
I've just explained to you.
No, you haven't.
Not that I have to explain to you.
It does when it comes down to me. You taking photographs.
It doesn't matter what I do.
When I've asked you 3 times not to take photos.
What right gives you the right to ask me not to take photos?
I've just spoke to someone.
It doesn't matter who you've spoken to.
Look, you've been asked not to take photos.
And I've told you, okay, I accept your request, but I'm going to refuse your request. I'm going to carry on taking
no, you're not
photos.
Going to carry on taking photos.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
You can't stop me taking photos.
And how do I know who you are?
Does it matter who I am?
Apart from a bloke on a blinking push bike.
Does it matter who I am?
Yeah.
Why does it matter who I am?
Because you're not supposed. You can't just go around taking photographs.
Your colleague said it's against the law to take photographs. Can he tell me what law it is that prevents me from taking photographs?
Look, I've asked you twice. I'm not going to ask you again.
You've asked me more than twice.
Well, this is your 4th time me asking you.
You obviously can't count, but...
yes, I can.
Well, I mean...
Obviously, you can't understand plain English.
I can understand plain English.
Right, I've asked you not to take photos.
Doesn't matter what you've asked me.
Are you going to listen?
I've listened to you and I've understand what you've said.
Right.
Now you understand what I'm saying.
No,
I'm going to carry on taking photos.
No, not when I've asked you. I mean it.
Doesn't matter what you mean.
No, you can't just go around taking photographs willy-nilly when you bloody want to.
What law prevents me from taking photographs?
I don't give a toss about the law.
You don't, do you?
No.
Well, maybe you're in the wrong job. If you're in a position of authority, trying to dictate to members of the public what you can and can't do.
You're taking a photograph, and you won't even tell me why you want a photograph.
It's because what business of it is it of yours?
Plenty.
Well, name one.
Look, on your way.
I'm on a public footpath. You can't move me on from a public footpath.
I can move you on for taking photographs.
No, you can't.
Yes, I bloody...
Under what law?
Look, shift.
I've got no intention of shifting.
Right, we'll see about it.
Go on then.
Right way.
Thank you very much.
Don't thank me, mate.
As you can see, that was quite an interesting encounter. They obviously think they've got powers they haven't got. Oh dear. Obviously coming back for some more.
Taking a shit. You really are pissing me off now.
It doesn't matter, I'm just taking photos here.
No, you're not.
Why not?
Go take a photograph somewhere else.
What, from across the other side of the road?
No.
From where do you suggest?
Go take a photograph of the steelworks.
I don't want to take a photograph of the steelworks.
Well, you ain't taking a photograph of this place.
Well, I've took a few.
Well, delete them.
What authority have you got to tell me to delete them?
You do that.
I'll stand over here then.
I see you take one more photograph.
And what? Sorry?
I've just been on to the police. You like breaking the law.
And what law is that?
Well, private property for one.
Right, I'm on public property.
Yes, but you're taking photos of a private company.
There's no law against that.
Oh, isn't there? Well, when they come down in 5 minutes, you tell them.
Well, I'll be around here, so point them in my direction.
You'll notice the striking resemblance between that footage and what we see from today's auditors, but the man behind the camera was a genuine photographer who had a YouTube account under the name Hamst. He used to go around Scunthorpe taking photographs for a local tourist site, so he didn't go to the Golden Wonder factory with the intention of causing any trouble. As a result of incidents like this, both the police and the private security industry started issuing guidance to personnel on public photography. You'll notice that this guidance is now often quoted by auditors as if it legitimises their activities, but of course the guidance was aimed at good faith photographers. It wasn't written in anticipation of people abusing photography rights to cause annoyance to others. The problem is that people with less scruple picked up on the Golden Wonder factory incident and other similar incidents and realised there was a commercial opportunity in it. That's when auditing was born, though at first it wasn't called auditing. Running in parallel to this was a movement in the United States, variously called First Amendment auditing and Fourth Amendment auditing.
Well, is it a constitutional right or is it baiting law enforcement? We're talking about people recording police on their own turf.
They call themselves First Amendment auditors, and sometimes these encounters are confrontational.
These American auditors were carrying out their activity in a society that values individual freedom and autonomy and has enshrined the right to freedom of speech and other rights in the Constitution. The United States is also a geographically massive country in which troublemakers can move around without being recognised very often. What these factors add up to is quite a brash, aggressive approach to auditing. YouTubers in Britain noticed this trend, and some of the more, shall we say, ruthless or sociopathic ones adapted it to UK conditions. But you'll notice a key difference between the American version and the version in Britain. Auditors in the United States justified themselves on the basis of their constitutional rights to free speech, the First Amendment, and their right against unreasonable search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment. In Britain, auditing had a different origin in photography, as I've just been explaining, so it differed. But the auditors in Britain started copying the aggressive and intrusive style of the American auditors because they realised there was an audience for it. I think it's also fair to say the aggressive style of auditing fits very well with the passive-aggressive wind-up culture common in Britain, so it appealed to a section of society here. People like Auditing Britain came on the scene in around 2015 and 2016, something like that. Quite a few years back now. By this time, I think Section 44 had been repealed, and I think this paved the way for Auditing Britain and his technique of imitating what might be called simulated hostile reconnaissance, because it was no longer the case that sensitivity to security concerns would be enough to stop and search a photographer. There was also a requirement for reasonable suspicion, and so any auditor who wanted to provoke a reaction from the police had to simulate acting suspiciously. Auditing Britain was one of the very first of the UK auditors, and his activity marked a departure from something resembling genuine photographic activity that tests the understanding of photography rights amongst the police and private security to a more commercially driven style called auditing, and he helped to define what auditing is and involves in the UK, which is a bad thing, not a good thing. He's not the hero of this story, he definitely is one of the villains. I could name a few more from that first generation of auditors. I still remember the names, most of them now forgotten, but what happens is that eventually the police or the civil courts catch up with them and they end up with criminal behaviour orders or civil injunctions, and at that point they stop, or they just stop because they get bored of it or simply move on with their lives. Marty Bladborough has also been around a long time, and his effect was to add an edge of nastiness and aggressiveness to it, and he has been toxic in that other auditors came along and copied him. Auditing Yorkshire is the best known among the imitators. Marty was also the first one, or one of the first, to use a drone in his auditing, and that was years ago, a fact that most people probably don't know. Auditing Yorkshire had some luck, without which most would probably never have heard of him. He was filming outside a police station in Huddersfield when a police inspector came out and challenged him. It appears from the footage that the inspector threatened him with arrest just for filming, and Auditing Yorkshire was able to present it that way. Let's watch it. To put this into context, I'll first show you the way he hassles a parking enforcement officer.
Are you giving tickets out?
Ticket to?
Are you giving tickets out?
I am.
Yeah. What's the problem here?
As far as I can tell, the problem's you. You may remember one of my previous videos about Auditing Yorkshire and his behaviour towards a parking enforcement officer. This goes much the same way. His beef seems to be that the police are also parked on double yellow lines or on pavements along roads with double yellow lines, yet they are never ticketed.
Have you not got a ticket? Do you want a ticket?
Certificate of medical, my friend. I'm asking.
Huh?
I'm asking him.
All right.
Yeah, why?
Because I'm asking because it just looked like you were bothering an innocent member of public. Because if you look down there...
Yeah, I know that.
Can you go ticket them, please?
A ticket before he's taking off.
Well, they've got to... Listen, mate, there's no exception to law.
Actually, there is. Generally speaking, the police are exempted from parking and waiting regulations. The reason being that if I dial 999, I don't want police officers to be delayed by 15 minutes while they try and remember in which public car park they left their car. In general, local authorities permit the police an exception from parking enforcement when they are parked for the purpose of their duties, which will almost invariably mean that no parking enforcement officer is going to be putting a parking ticket on a police car. Whether you think that's right or wrong, that's the reality. Personally, it's not something that exercises me much because it seems obvious to me that the police must be accepted from some laws for the purpose of their duties. For instance, a police officer may have to break the speed limit to catch a suspect. Do you want him to stick to the speed limit, or do you want him to catch the suspect? Similarly, we can't have a situation where police officers are delayed getting to somebody being stabbed because they're having to hunt round public car parks for their cars. I'd rather just let the police park on double yellow lines, if you don't mind.
You've got a police van and a police car parked on the path.
I done it in the morning.
I'm not having a go at you. Look at that. Double yellow lines, double blips.
I know.
That's disgusting.
Disgusting. Everybody says. By issue, he's taking off.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to have a go at you because it's not your fault. You're just a civil enforcement officer. But it's a bad reputation, that, to public. You know what I mean? It's a bad image, a really bad image. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I see the point that Auditing Yorkshire is making there about how it looks, but there's a reason for it. Space is limited. The alternative is that the taxpayer pays for more dedicated parking areas for the police, or the police just withdraw from the town centre and have all their buildings in out-of-town areas.
I've never seen no like it in my life, and I've been all over the country.
Well, I'd be surprised because the police are famous in this country for bad parking.
I've never seen any...
If issuing in the morning time 2-3 vehicles.
Right. Have you done them today, yeah?
It's taking off.
Right.
So
I'm gonna follow it up anyway.
Yeah,
I'm gonna follow it up and see if I can. Who do you work for? Council? Do you work for Kirk Police Council?
I work there.
Directly?
Yeah.
Right. Just so I can serve, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a complaint in, not about you, about these guys.
Yeah,
so
you can do that.
I'll just get your numbers. 117.
Yeah.
CEO 117.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to ring council and put a complaint in and tell them that I've spoken to you.
Fine,
and that you've been really, really polite and really professional.
Yeah.
All right, good lad.
What auditors mean by polite and professional is that the unfortunate person who was filmed has been obsequious towards the auditor. Mind you, I don't think we can really blame the parking enforcement officer for taking that attitude. We've set the scene. In a few moments he meets the inspector.
Look at this, guys, Huddersfield Police Station. look at this. We've got a police van. Straight back there. A police van on the path. As you can see, members of the public are having to walk onto the road to walk around it. It's absolutely disgusting. Double yellow lines, double blips, means you shouldn't be parked there. So I'm going to get some pictures, and these are going to professional standards.
I agree it's not an ideal setup, and he isn't doing anything wrong here in taking the photos and passing it on to professional standards, but I suspect that's not the real reason he's there. I think the real reason he's there is to provoke a reaction from the police. There is a proper reason why the police park like that, and they've obviously parked up on the pavement to make things easier for vehicles along that road and also vehicles emerging out of the adjacent building complex.
Get a close picture of them blips as well, look guys. And the yellows. Yeah. Registration on that one. Registration on this one. That's disgusting. Absolutely diabolical. Hey, we've got blue lights. Yay. You're that cock. How are you doing?
Ask you what you're doing, please, sir.
Oh, Inspector, that's brilliant. Can you identify yourself, please, sir?
Inspector Dyson.
Inspector Dyson.
Can I ask you what you're doing, sir?
Taking a picture of these.
Right, why are you doing that?
Because I'm going to report them to professional standards and the council.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely disgusting. I've witnessed so many people having to walk onto the road and endanger themselves.
I am recording at the moment.
Thanks for telling me, Inspector.
Okay.
I'm not having a go at you.
Matter of courtesy, just to let you know. Obviously, I don't know who you are.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You've got a mask on. That
brilliant.
That could obviously be some reason for you hiding your identity. I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got a camera going.
I have, and I really
taking photos of
yeah.
police station, police buildings, which you do know there is an offence which doesn't get prosecuted very often regarding taking photographs of public buildings, which this is one of. Okay.
Unfortunately, the inspector is wrong. There is no such offence. I suspect he didn't mean it in the way he put it. What I think he's trying to refer to is the concept of hostile reconnaissance, which is enacted as an offence under Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000. Auditing Yorkshire was wearing a mask during this incident. This is a factor that the critics of the police inspector conveniently overlook. We know he was wearing a mask because what you're watching now is the inspector's body cam footage, which Auditing Yorkshire helpfully uploaded to YouTube after obtaining it from the police. Now that we know he was dressed like this, we can look at the inspector's actions a bit differently. If we put ourselves in his position, we can see that he may have been called to a strange man in a mask filming police cars in the police station, and the inspector has been indoctrinated in the belief that people undertaking such activity could be terrorists undertaking hostile reconnaissance, or could be innocent people undertaking photography that may assist terrorists if the images are published. There is an offence that covers this, which I mentioned earlier, contained in Section 58(1)(a) of the Terrorism Act 2000, which states that it is an offence to collect or make a record of information of a kind likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism. Section 58(3) goes on to provide a defence as follows. It is a defence for a person charged with an offence under this section to prove that he had a reasonable excuse for his action or possession. Section 58(3)(a) goes on to explain that defence as follows. The cases in which a person has a reasonable excuse for the purposes of subsection 3 include, but are not limited to, those in which a. At the time of a person's action or possession, the person did not know and had no reason to believe that the document or record in question contained or was likely to contain information of a kind likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism, or b. The person's action or possession was for the purposes of 1. Carrying out work as a journalist, or 2. Academic research. On the face of it, that looks quite worrying if you're a photographer, but thinking about it, what Section 58 is really saying is that if you have a lawful reason for carrying out the photography, then you're fine. The reason could be that it's a hobby. The circumstances under which somebody would actually be prosecuted under Section 58 would be quite narrow, and I imagine prosecutions are quite rare. It's really a low threshold catch-all provision for circumstances where the police have caught somebody whom they suspect to be a terrorist, but they can't get them for anything else, or they fear that the more serious charges can't be proved in court. In this situation, Auditing Yorkshire keeps his mask on, but does give an explanation. This is how the inspector responds.
If you want to take photographs of police vehicles, that's fine.
The inspector isn't objecting to Auditing Yorkshire taking photographs of the vehicles, just the building.
That's
What offence is it, please, if you don't mind me asking?
If you want to look it up, I don't know the full legislation, so what Michigan League do, but there is an offence of taking photographs within or of a public building. Like you can't do it of a court or within the court building. It's the same guys, the same legislation.
Unless I'm mistaken and they're actually stood at a court, again, what the inspector says there is incorrect. I do think what the inspector had in mind is the Section 58 offence.
So, what I was going to say to you is, obviously, you want to speak to people about the parking of vehicles, obviously. I'm quite happy for you to do that. What I will say to you is that if you want to forward details to professional standards,
I'm going to
direct them, it's up to yourself.
You'll have heard what the inspector said there. He wasn't threatening Auditing Yorkshire with arrest at this point. He encouraged him to report his complaint to professional standards. He merely warned him about the potential implications of filming certain buildings. He has got himself confused about the law, but broadly speaking, what he's doing is expressing what Section 58 says. It doesn't, let me stress, mean that people can't photograph police stations and similar buildings. They can. You can even photograph a court as long as you're not stood within the court or in the precincts of the court. But Auditing Yorkshire is stood there wearing a mask, and to a police officer who is trained in looking at people suspiciously and sceptically, that could be a cause for concern because, as the inspector says, Auditing Yorkshire may be trying to hide his identity.
To be honest, Inspector, and I mean this with the utmost respect, I'm flabbergasted that you seem to think it's an offence, or there is an offence, to film public buildings, but you can't tell me what it is.
This is where we get to the core of it. There is no specific offence of filming public buildings as such, but filming public buildings could amount to an offence under Section 58 where the material is likely to be of assistance to terrorists. That's really what the inspector is warning him about. I think there is an onus on Auditing Yorkshire to give further reassurance because, although the inspector is a bit confused about the law, he is still broadly right in what he's saying, and you can't blame him for being a bit concerned by the person in front of him. That's just his job.
I'm flabbergasted.
Why?
Well, a man of your experience, you look like you've been at job for a long time. You're an inspector,
you're obviously
and you can't tell me what offence it is.
To get a bite out, mate, and you've got.
I'm not trying to get a bite out of you.
What I'll say to you is there is a lot of legislation out there, okay?
Which I know.
You tell me what that legislation is.
Well, I don't need to tell you. You're an inspector, mate.
I've told you there's legislation that prevents people from taking photographs of public buildings.
Right.
Okay. I cannot quote the actual script of the legislation.
Well, until you can quote
it's in place.
Stop talking about it.
Right, okay.
Because I know what it is.
You know what it is, do you? If you know that the inspector is broadly right in what he's saying, why do you call him Inspector Muppet? He's a bit confused about the law, is the inspector, and the way he's expressing it is not quite right. But at the same time, a police officer, even a senior one like an inspector, is not a trained lawyer, and in his day-to-day work he has to apply lots of different and complicated laws and other guidelines and principles and concepts in situations where he's making a snap judgment. You know full well what the inspector is talking about, and instead of offering him the necessary reassurance, you see the role of an auditor as winding him up and trying to humiliate him. The way this audit could have gone is that you could have said this to the inspector. First, Inspector, let me apologise that you've been called out to speak with me. It's not my intention to take up the time of the police. Thank you for your advice about photographing buildings. I think you're referring to hostile reconnaissance. I will continue to film the police station and other buildings, despite what you say, because I am not committing an offence under Section 58. But let me just reassure you that my presence here is purely journalistic, in that I am recording police parking behaviour along this road for the purpose of a mini documentary on YouTube, and I will also be making a report to Professional Standards about the issue I am covering, just to alert them to the problem, as it's causing difficulties for pedestrians and drivers locally. Let me just stress, Inspector, I have no issue with you. You're being entirely professional in giving me advice about the sensitivity of public buildings, which I certainly do take on board. I am not affiliated with any media organisation. I'm independent and have my own YouTube channel. As I'm carrying out journalism, I'm availed of the Special Purposes exemption, so I'm not obliged to give you any of my details under data protection. But I will be happy to cooperate in any further way I can, if it helps, as long as it doesn't infringe my own civil rights. Is there anything else I can help you with, Inspector? Why couldn't Auditing Yorkshire have said something like that? I'm not saying he has to use those exact words or that script. He can find his own way of expressing it. The point is, why did he have to turn it into an argument? Of course, we know why. It's good content for his channel. It doesn't serve any purpose beyond entertainment at the expense of this inspector's career, because he retired not long after this incident under the heavy implication that it was because of this incident.
Well, until you can quote it, stop talking about it. I don't wish to discuss it further.
What I say to you now is you are now getting to a level where you are now becoming a little bit obstructive and offensive.
I agree with the inspector. I think Auditing Yorkshire is doing the same thing as Auditing Britain, which is turning up at the environs of a police station with the intention of provoking a response by acting suspiciously on purpose. That is an offence of obstructing a police officer, contrary to Section 89(2) of the Police Act 1996.
Okay,
You came up to
I
me.
would ask you to leave the area. I've come up to you to ask you why you're taking photographs of a public building and police vehicles, okay? I've explained myself to you. I've told you I am. Can I ask who you are?
He's laughing at you.
Can I ask who you are?
Who are you? Identify yourself.
Can I
please.
ask who you are, please, first?
You don't have to indict.
Can I ask who you are, please?
So you've got an inspector here,
Okay.
and you're telling me you do not have to identify yourself.
Right.
A police officer does not have to identify himself, whatever that may mean in precise terms, unless he is conducting a stop and search. For present purposes, it's clearly apparent that he is a police officer, and that will suffice.
At the moment, I'm getting concerned more about your behaviour.
WK9N. So Whiskey Kilo 9 November. He's the dog handler at Huddersfield Police Station.
Can I see your details, please?
Badge number 3092 PC Huntington. You'll be got a Professional Standards, sir.
On what charge? The officer is not required to identify himself to any greater extent than you've done already. You've got his number. It's not like he was hiding it from you. He's not done anything wrong. Why are you wasting the time of Professional Standards and other public bodies with these frivolous complaints?
Can I see your details, please?
No, you can't.
Right, okay. What I'm saying to you now is that you are also causing a bit of a problem here now, aren't you?
I'm on a public footpath.
Leave, okay?
I'm on a public footpath.
I know you are. And you're obviously one of these people that wants to come round and try and wind police officers up.
I think that sums it up. To someone who doesn't know much about auditors, it may look like the inspector is blundering around, but the reality is that the inspector is right in what he's doing. He may have got the law a bit confused, but we can forgive him for that. Auditing Yorkshire is to blame for the escalation of this.
I'm just doing something other people don't have the balls to do, which is take pictures of police cars parked in just an absurd place. I mean, come on, who the hell is parked there?
Right.
Double yellow lines and double blips. Do you know what that means?
Right. If you're
the Road Traffic Act
regarding Professional Standards, please do so.
I will
What I've asked you to do now is actually move on yourself.
You're going to Professional Standards as well.
Fine.
And so is this guy here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
At least you told me you recorded. And it's nice to see you don't have a gang badge on. You've got a gang badge on, so don't even look at me. I don't want to speak to you. Get rid of that. Get yourself on eBay and get yourself one of these. $2.99 and wear it with pride. The Union Jack flag. Yeah, take that crap off get a Union Jack.
What I think he means by a gang badge is that greyed out Union Jack badge that you sometimes see police officers wear nowadays. Personally, I don't believe the police should wear such a badge at all, as they serve the Crown rather than the state, and I think that's a pretty fundamental distinction between the law on the one hand and political authority on the other. The police should ultimately serve the law, so I don't think they should wear national flags at all. They shouldn't have a Union Jack flag anyway. But I don't believe any disrespect is intended by the greyed out badge. The reason for it is purely operational. It's greyed out so that it's not conspicuous. A bit like how in the old days police constables used to have night helmets with blacked out copper plates so that they could not be easily seen at night.
I'm starting to believe that you're now committing a racist incident. If you carry on a
racist incident?
Yeah.
I'm a British citizen on British soil.
I perceive this to be a racist matter now, okay?
I think this is a point where the inspector lost the plot. He will probably admit this himself if he watched it back. What he's referring to are sections 28 and 31 of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. Section 28.1 defines the term racially aggravated as follows. An offence is racially aggravated for the purposes of sections 29 to 32 below if a. At the time of committing the offence or immediately before or after doing so, the offender demonstrates towards the victim of the offence hostility on the victim's membership or presumed membership of a racial group, or b. The offence is motivated, wholly or partly, by hostility towards members of a racial group based on their membership of that group. Section 28.4 states, in this section, racial group means a group of persons defined by reference to race, colour, nationality, including citizenship, or ethnic or national origins. Section 31 states, a person is guilty of an offence under this section if he commits a. An offence under Section 4 of the Public Order Act 1986, i.e. fear or provocation of violence, b. An offence under Section 4A of that Act, i.e. intentional harassment, alarm or distress, or c. An offence under Section 5 of that Act, i.e. harassment, alarm or distress, which is racially aggravated for the purposes of this section. Nothing that Auditing Yorkshire just said about the flag stuff could possibly be interpreted as a Section 31 offence. That's aside from whether he's committing a public order offence, which we'll move on to in a few moments. If I was going to defend the inspector on this point, I would say that the person he's having to deal with is very troublesome, and you can kind of understand why he might have been clutching at straws, looking for reasons to deal with him, something to pin on him, but the police can't fall into this trap of using the law to criminalise people. That's getting things the wrong way round. The idea is that you assess whether a person's behaviour is a crime, not whether a crime can be made to fit a person's behaviour. That's a crucial distinction. This is why, incidentally, I'm personally opposed to those provisions in the Crime and Disorder Act. To me, the whole concept of hate speech and racially motivated offences or racially aggravated offences is objectionable. I think all of that needs to be removed from the statute book, because what it does is encourage exactly what we see here, where the police and complainants seek to criminalise behaviour in the sense of making a crime fit a person's conduct, which is a dangerous path for the law.
Okay,
I am a British citizen on British soil.
I would ask you to leave the area, okay, because you just offended me and my colleague by saying that badges that we wear
I am a British citizen on British.
We're in brass eye territory now, aren't we? I regret to say that I can't defend the inspector on this point. He is wrong. It's unfortunate because I think in the main the criticism he's received on social media over the last year or so has been spectacularly unfair and unjust. He doesn't deserve the opprobrium he got for this incident. He doesn't deserve to be called a muppet and so on. But on this particular issue about the badge, he is talking nonsense. Really, both of them are talking nonsense, because the police officers should not be wearing national flags anyway. Yes, fly the national flag outside police stations, I've no issue with that, but an individual police constable owes his allegiance to the Crown, which is really a way of saying that his ultimate duty is to the law. That's why we ask new police officers to swear an oath of attestation to the King. The consistency is in the underlying moral basis of the law, not in any particular geopolitical arrangements or national borders or national allegiances. The idea is that a police officer is a servant of the law, and the law should be something that arises from eternal ideas about morality. He should not owe his allegiance to some passing system of government or political statehood, which is really just an allegiance to power, and that could change at any time. That's why they shouldn't be wearing those flags at all. Anyway, I'm getting off the point.
Wearing a Union Jack
that to be a racist
in
behaviour.
England.
Please leave the area
in
now.
England.
Okay.
I am wearing a Union Jack,
the
so
area
how's
now.
that racist?
I'm
That's not
saying,
representing the
you're
country.
Saying that
How's it
he's
racist?
You're saying that things that we wear we shouldn't be wearing.
Well, you
I
shouldn't
find
be.
that offensive, and I
Well,
find that
20
hating
I'll
to
tell you
them.
what I find
So I'd say,
offensive.
I want you to leave the area
20
now,
years
please.
ago, 20 years
I
ago,
want you to
police
leave the area.
officers were told they wasn't allowed to wear the
I
Union
want you
Jack
to
on
leave
the
the area now,
uniform,
please.
because it wasn't part of the uniform.
I want you
So
to leave
why are
the
you wearing
area.
gang badges? What makes them
I
part
want
of
you
the
to leave
uniform?
the area now.
No.
Okay.
I'm on a public highway. I am on a public footpath being obstructed by 2 police vehicles.
No, you're obstructing the path as well.
No, I'm not.
Because you won't move on.
I am obstructing the path, they're obstructing the path. I've got proof and evidence and somebody else recording.
Can I take your
that
details,
this is,
please? Because I
this
believe
is
you may be committing offences now.
fitting an offence.
It will be interesting to find out what offence he thinks Auditing Yorkshire has committed. Admittedly, if there were offences against fashion, Auditing Yorkshire would be in serious trouble. Though I do like the glasses he's been wearing recently, they make him look swish and intellectual. It certainly raises the bar in the fashion stakes. DJ Audits will now have to up the ante on the green tracky bottoms.
Committing an offence?
Yeah, obstructing the highway.
No, these are obstructing the highway.
Offences in relation to...
Your police van's obstructing the highway.
Yeah, that is allowed to do because I'm dealing with an incident that's protecting
There's no
me.
incident. There's no incident to deal with. You came to me, and that's what we're doing.
I came to you because
And
I
I
was
told you.
concerned about your
Right.
behaviour, okay?
Inspector, you are dismissed.
Bye-bye.
Don't wish to speak to you anymore. Absolute muppet.
That's your first warning regarding public order. If you call me a muppet again, I will arrest you, okay? Public order. Harassment, alarm, distress, okay?
Are you being serious?
No, I am very serious.
You are going to be very, very famous by the end of today, my friend.
Is Auditing Yorkshire committing an offence by calling the police inspector a muppet? We have 2 public order offences that this could cover. One of them is Section 4A of the Public Order Act 1986, which is worded as follows. A person is guilty of an offence if, with intent to cause a person harassment, alarm or distress, he uses threatening, abusive or insulting words or behaviour or disorderly behaviour, or displays any writing, sign or other visible representation which is threatening, abusive or insulting, thereby causing that or another person harassment, alarm or distress. The other offence is in Section 5, which I have referred to a lot on this channel before, and is worded as follows. A person is guilty of an offence if he uses threatening words or behaviour or disorderly behaviour, or displays any writing, sign or other visible representation which is threatening within the hearing or sight of a person likely to be caused harassment, alarm or distress thereby. Section 4A requires intent. I really doubt that it could be proven that Auditing Yorkshire intended to cause harassment, alarm or distress to the inspector. Section 5 is easy to prosecute because no intent is required, but Section 5.3 provides a defence as follows. It is a defence for the accused to prove A. that he had no reason to believe that there was any person within hearing or sight who was likely to be caused harassment, alarm or distress. C. that his conduct was reasonable. The defence in Section 5.3a seems to be the one that is relevant, but would it apply here? There is no reason to believe that a police officer would be caused harassment, alarm or distress by being called a muppet, but that's not the offence. The Section 5.1 offence does not require that the officer actually is caused harassment, alarm or distress, nor does it require that anyone is caused harassment, alarm or distress. The offence in Section 5.1 only requires that someone within hearing or sight is likely to be caused harassment, alarm or distress by the threats or disorderly behaviour. Calling someone a muppet is not a threat, but it could be interpreted as disorderly, and the fact that the insult is directed at a uniformed police officer during the course of his duties could be seen as disorderly by someone within hearing or sight of the incident. Furthermore, if we broaden this out, Auditing Yorkshire's use of the camera like this and his general behaviour throughout the incident as it's developed could be seen as disorderly behaviour likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress. It could also be seen as threatening behaviour because people will often not wish to be filmed, and his motive here is to provoke a reaction, not simply to gather and impart information. I also want to just briefly look at the defence in 5.3c, that his conduct was reasonable. Auditing Yorkshire might try to argue that on the basis that the police inspector's reaction to his behaviour was perhaps over the top, but I'm not convinced that it was. But nevertheless, that's one possible avenue he could pursue. I think the main defence would be under 5.3a, and I think there are plenty of arguments that the prosecution could make to convince a court that in fact it is a Section 5.1 offence that has been committed. Nevertheless, I do think a better avenue for the officer to follow here would have been an arrest and then de-arrest for breach of a peace. But even so, I don't think we can easily say that the officer is in the wrong to make use of a public order offence. There are circumstances when you'd expect a police officer to take it on the chin, but this is not just somebody shouting an insult to a random police officer. This is a developed incident.
Very famous.
If you call me a muppet again, I will arrest you for it.
Let me get out of the way because now I'm obstructing the road. I'm going to prove to you now that I am not here.
It's offensive.
I am going to prove to you, Inspector, on camera,
You're under arrest for harassment, alarm and distress.
I agree with the arrest. I doubt it could have been prosecuted successfully in the end. I personally would have found Auditing Yorkshire not guilty. But at the same time, I think in that moment, in the heat of the incident, and for the reasons I've already given, I think the inspector was well within the law and his powers to make that arrest. He could have handled the whole thing differently, in a more low-key way. I think I would have preferred him to say to Auditing Yorkshire that unless he moved on, he could be arrested for breach of a peace. Even so, I think the arrest was lawful. I'd be very interested to know on what basis Auditing Yorkshire received his compensation for this.
Had your chances there, pal. Had my chances, I ain't done no wrong, mate. You're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Which of course was your aim all along, to bait police officers. But unfortunately, Auditing Yorkshire's prediction, I think, did turn out to be true, in that the inspector has come off the worst from this and he's no longer a police officer. I think he's now a PCSO, having retired, and Auditing Yorkshire was paid thousands in compensation for this. Here's Auditing Yorkshire bragging about it. I think that it is unjust and unfair, but unjust and unfair things happen in the real world, especially when auditors are assisted by lawyers who are fairly clued up.
Can you let go of my arm, please?
No, you're under arrest.
You're going to be in a lot of trouble, Inspector. What are you pushing me up against there for? I'm not struggling. I'm not struggling. What are you pushing me for? There's no need to push me. Why are you pushing my arm further up my back?
I told you you're
and
under
I've told you, yeah, I'm under arrest, but I'm not. I'm cooperating. So why the hell are you doing that to me back?
Thank you, it's in my back pocket, somebody could move it.
You're in a lot of trouble.
Right, sir.
Don't delete your body cam footage, Inspector, because I'll be making a subject access request. I'll be making a subject access request for your footage. Yeah, I'll turn the camera off now.
Auditing Yorkshire is where he belongs at this point of the footage. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned, with the help of lawyers, he did get the better of the police, and a perfectly good police officer lost his career.
Am I safe to turn the camera off?
Take it back.
Am I safe to turn the camera off?
can do whatever you want.
Am I allowed to record in here?
Yeah.
Right, I'll turn it off.
I wish you'd turn off. It's not hard to see who influenced Auditing Yorkshire's approach to auditing.
Listen, just get back inside, mate, and stop.
Shut up, I'll do what I want to do. Go do something better. You go do something better. Muppets.
Two other auditors, DJ Audits and PJ Audits, are relatively new to it. They are both a bit more intelligent and capable than the others and brought a more professional touch to auditing, but they make use of much the same essential tactics as the others. I would contend that of all the auditors, Marty Bladborough has had the biggest influence on auditing in this country, even though his subscriber count and views are nothing spectacular. He and other sociopaths jumped on the bandwagon and became successful. They don't care about public photography rights, and the places they visit, they don't care about that either. As a result, genuine photographers were sidetracked in this field because obviously their content will not be as entertaining because they have a genuine interest in what they're doing and the places they're visiting, which will seem dull and boring to the type of person who watches auditing videos and is just filling in dead time or seeking gratification. Confrontation is watchable and popular for the same reason soap operas are popular, even amongst some grown men, and public executions used to be popular for much the same reason. Is auditing a crime? Most of the time, auditors are filming people in a public place or where they can be seen from the public highway. The law does not specifically say this cannot be done, but that comes with a vital caveat that it is legal as long as the person being filmed is not being harassed and as long as the auditor is not acting in a disorderly manner that is likely to cause someone harassment, alarm or distress. In many cases, auditors are harassing people or they are acting in a disorderly manner. Even where that is not the case, the auditor is uploading footage of people without consent, and although that is not in itself against the law and is not even required from a privacy or data protection point of view, the threat of doing so could again be considered to fall within harassment or a public order offence in certain circumstances. And even where there is no such threat, if the auditor does not have consent to upload, then anyone appearing in the video could have the video taken down by submitting a privacy or harassment complaint to YouTube. Aside from all that, even if auditing wasn't against the law and didn't involve infringing the rights of others, there would still be a strong argument against it. You turn up at business premises often wearing a mask and certainly with an entitled attitude, filming that ordinary business for no apparent reason. You stand there filming people at work and you carry on when they ask you to stop. You are rude and fail to explain yourself in an honest and transparent way, which is just common courtesy. Just because there's no law against what you're doing doesn't make it right. The surest and quickest way to persuade Parliament to pass a law making it a crime to take photographs in public is to behave in the way auditors behave. The victims of auditors are in the main just ordinary working people. They don't ask for this and they don't deserve it. Of course photography is not a crime, nor should it be, and nobody is suggesting it should be, but using a camera to annoy, harass and alarm people surely is a crime, and anyway is certainly wrong.